Welcome,
Cool.
everyone. My name is Melisha Taylor. I am a professor here at Cal State San Marcos in the music department, as well as the art, media, and design department. I'm also the instructor for AMD 380, Visionary Artists of Color, one of the courses that will be hosting the Resounding Visions speaker series this semester. I am joined tonight by Professor Jeffrey Ray.
Hello. I teach in the AMD department, and I do teach the AMD 308, which is a sound course designed to give you an appreciation for sound, an understanding of audio art, and kind of an introduction to design, sound design for film and video, and some composition as well. And we cover sound art as well as podcasting. So take the course. It's available next semester, AMD 308. And
Awesome.
yes, we also have workshops that Amy did yesterday. It was so fantastic. The workshops are a lot more formal. We talk a little bit more about the process. And if you want to be invited to them, just email the secretary, the most amazing Kevin, and we'll get you in the next workshop if you're interested. So, and Anne as well. Anne is not with us, but she's the other sound professor as well, and she's great as well. So there you go.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Thank you for that plug. And now we want to begin today's presentation with a land acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge that we are speaking to you today from the unceded territory of the Kumeyaay peoples, and that the meeting place of Cal State San Marcos and its surrounding areas is still home to the 6 federally recognized bands of the La Jolla, Pala, Pauma, Pechanga, Rincon, Soboba, Luiseño, and Pawankim people. We would like to take this moment to acknowledge and express our appreciation and respect for these groups whose homelands we reside and learn on, recognizing that they are stewards of this land from time immemorial, in spite of the ongoing violence of settler colonialism. And given that we are not all together for this session, we invite you to look into those ancestral homelands where you reside on. I am on the Creek territory. And by consulting the resources we will be sharing in the chat, you can see the website native-land.ca as a first step, and I will enter that into the chat shortly. And visiting this website will be your first step in recognizing the resilience and strength of Indigenous communities and expressing solidarity with efforts to undo their intentional erasure. So let's take a few quiet moments to project solidarity as I share these resources in the chat now.
Okay. Thank you. Welcome to our first session of Resounding Visions. This is a year-long series of BIPOC artists, musicians, and scholars who work at the intersection of sound and art to explore forms of cultural resistance and affirmation. The programming committee for the series include faculty members Misael Diaz, Christine Diekman, Ana Luisa Petrisco, Melisha Taylor, and myself, Jeff Ray.
Awesome. We would also like to extend a special thank you to Steve and Laura Wagner and the Epstein Family Foundation for their generous funding that makes these events possible. And we also want to thank the School of the Arts staff, especially Albert Rascon, for their support.
Today's presentation by Ami Dong will last approximately 30 minutes, and then afterwards we'll be opening up a question, comments. And we will, Melisha and I will read that out loud for our presenter. So in your Q&A, I think, Albert, right? There's a Q&A thing that you put in there, and we'll see them. And before I introduce, before Ami starts, I want to give you a short little bio. Ami Deng is a South Asian American vocalist, sitarist, composer, and producer from Baltimore. Her sound ranges from North Indian classical fused with noise ambient electronics to beat-driven psych and experimental dance pop. The work references her hybrid identity as a first-generation South Asian American Sikh upbringing, musical education, as well as chaos and spirituality of the landscapes of both Baltimore and urban India. Picking up her first sitar when she was 12 years old, Deng has studied Northern Indian classical music, voice, and sitar in both New Delhi and Maryland. She also holds a degree in music technology and composition from Oberlin College Conservatory of Music, following in the footsteps of artists like Ravi Shankar and Philip Glass. And she seeks to advance the sound of contemporary experimental pop and electronic music with the sounds of South Asia through vocal, sitar, ragas, and sampling. And she's worked with people such as Animal Collective, one of my favorite bands. And it's an honor. She did a workshop yesterday, it was fantastic. And I'm looking forward to today's lecture. We are so excited. So please welcome Ami Deng.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. I'm just going to dive right in. Thanks. Thanks so much, everyone. I'm just going to move over to my desk with the computer. So just give me 30 seconds and, think about your questions. I'll be with you in one moment.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much. Alicia and I will help bring the questions along. I actually don't know how this Q&A, try hitting the Q&A and doing it through there, or you can even do questions just in the chat. So either or, please. Oh yeah, it showed up in the Q&A. You see
Cool.
that, Melisha?
I do.
All right, it's working.
Now, Ami, you were going to speak a little bit first.
Yeah, I could talk a little bit about, I think because of the topic of your class, I was thinking about talking a little bit about the pieces I played. So the first, pretty much everything I performed, you all can hear me, right?
Yes.
Yes.
I switched mics, so I wanted to make sure. So I performed, all the sitar pieces I performed today are from my album Parted Plains, which came out in 2019. And I was telling Jeff's class a little bit this yesterday. So that album, when I first started working on that album, I really just wanted to kind of approach the sitar and electronics together as in a group of studies, and just thinking about experimentation between sitar and software synths, which I've been using software synthesizers for a while now. And I hadn't really kind of approached a body of work like that. Like, let me just do some experiments, right? And then, so I started working on it that way, but then kind of soon into that process, I was actually invited to participate in creating and performing a live score for what is known as the first feature-length animated film called The Adventures of Prince Ahmed from 1926 by a filmmaker, Lotte Reiniger. And so The Adventures of Prince Ahmed is based on a story from 1001 Nights. And so if any of you all are familiar with 1001 Nights, it's based on, these old Middle Eastern and Far Eastern fairy tales, essentially. And so while I was working on this score, I was sort of, really inundated with all of these stories that have been told by Western storytellers that we learn, as children. We hear these stories in the United States and in the West. And I couldn't help but think, of course, Lotte Reiniger's work is incredibly beautiful. I will say, please go out and see the film. It's incredibly detailed shadow puppetry work. And then she paints onto the film as well. Really, really innovative and beautiful work. But, you can't, in this day and age, I can't help but see that and see how problematic some of the depictions of people of different races are, and some of the way that women are depicted, these stories and the way that they were told, the way that they were translated and told, through all these different storytellers is incredibly problematic and really exotifies people. So, from people from kind of, and 1001 Nights is really a group of stories that is from lands all over the Far East, and Middle East and Far East, I should say. So I actually ended up dedicating that body of work, Parted Plains, to those stories. And then I also dug into a compilation of stories called The Tales of the Punjab, which is translated by a British woman about turn of the century. I can't remember exactly what year, but Annie Flora Steele. And she went to Punjab and heard all of these various folk tales and fairy tales from the people in Punjab and then translated them. But actually, if you look at her original manuscript, the book that she published, she actually has all these footnotes that describe sort of what she heard from people and then how she chose to translate them. And she took all these cultural liberties to do that. So with that album, I really just wanted to create sort of another translation of these various stories. I also wanted to reclaim these stories for myself. I also wanted us to just draw attention to the fact that there is I don't know if there's a true original storyteller of some of these stories. They've been sort of translated over time. And also so many of these folktales that we learn are really, they're referencing one another. There's so many fairy tales all over the world that have common origins. And so it also just sort of brings out the universality of a lot of these tales. So a lot of people want to say, oh, this folktale belongs here. It's about these people. And, in another sense, I also just want to draw attention to how these stories are just universal and really about, universal human, the human condition. And so, yeah, that's pretty much the extent of what I wanted to talk about, since those were some of the pieces I played today, but I'm happy to answer questions.
Beautiful, beautiful connections. I hear you mentioning
Beautiful.
a lot about tradition, about oral history, about how you in the present day can look and reflect back on older stories, but bring them to today. And the fact that, like what you said, they've been retranslated, they've been reinterpreted, they are universal. So there's the flexibility that you can apply these stories to yourself, and that we can all understand these stories, because oral tradition is how stories were originally told. It was that way from the beginning. Beautiful. Lots of great questions here in the Q&A. Thank you, students. We've got, let's see, Deshelle Clark says, what made you interested in music? Matthew says, how did you learn how to play this music? So let's start there.
Sure. So I've been playing music from a very young age. I think partly it was a little bit on my parents. Certainly, my parents encouraged nobody in my family is a musician, but I think my mom always wished we had gotten a chance to study music. And so when I was very young, I took piano lessons, I took some violin lessons. I had no discipline, so I pretty promptly quit. I will, the very common story. And then I also grew up, so my family is Sikh, and it's a religion from South Asia, minority religion. And I mean, you're all in California, so there's many more Sikhs on the West Coast than there are on the East Coast in particular, and other parts of the United States. But I grew up learning a lot of music in the Sikh temple and in Sunday school. So in Sikhism, I grew up singing Sikh hymns and singing with a harmonium, which is a small hand pump of kind of a small organ, essentially. So, and the other thing with Sikhism is actually that all of the scripture in the Guru Granth Sahib, which is the main kind of primary holy scripture, is actually intended to be sung. It is set to ragas. In Indian classical music, we don't have a major or minor mode. We have ragas, which are other sets of notes that don't necessarily conform to the major or minor standard that we have in the West. So I kind of from off the bat, from having a very mixed landscape of sound around me, and just being raised with some of that music, I was interested in music. And then when I was I was born and raised in Maryland, and my mom found out about a somebody who taught sitar when I was 12, and she asked me, "Do you want to play?" And I literally was just like, "Oh, okay, whatever." And so she was really have me play. So I will credit this all to my mom. I really hated it at first. I really did not like it. I played for a couple years, and she finally was like, "Okay, I don't want to force you to do this anymore, so I won't." And then I came back to it. So I played for a couple years. I quit for a few years, and I came back to it on my own. But in that time, I was still always really, throughout my childhood, really into singing. I was really encouraged as a singer because I'm loud. So that was that's a way that one is often encouraged as a child. So yeah, it's sort of a combination of all that. Yeah.
Wow, beautiful. So yes, you had the Western training. You also
Mhm.
had a spiritual connection to music. Both of those contributing, and then also you had your mom go ahead and tell you to learn the instrument. All three of those are pretty huge contributors to how you became the musician you are today. And then we have a few more questions about improvisation.
Mhm.
Tristan asks, how much of your writing and playing involves improv versus following the form? So, the Western system, and you mentioned the raga system. Is the raga system and playing the sitar for you, especially in this format with electronics and synthesizers, are you in an improvisational state?
Sure. So I think a lot of my composing from the beginning involves a lot of improvisation and sort of playing around. But then it sort of turns into improvising within a structure. So what you saw today, the electronics, what you heard today were very fixed. There were loops that I triggered, which I typically work that way. I think in terms of my work with electronic production, I don't improvise so much. But with playing sitar and with singing, my process often starts to kind of like improvising on top of loops or on top of little crafted electronic melodies. And then there will be, so what I played today was, every piece had sort of a set of notes that I was mostly playing in. Some of them had little motifs or melodies that I would come back to, but with other improvisation happening throughout. So it's not, if for any of you who know about jazz and are trained in jazz, it's not too different from that approach, but obviously a very different result. Yeah, so it kind of goes back and forth, and sometimes I think I tend to also improvise more when I collaborate with people. So I'll get together with people and jam. I have people I collaborate with, and then improvising comes up a bit more. Yeah.
Yes, beautiful. Let's see. How long did it take you to learn how to play the sitar? So you started as, at what age did you start at?
Sure. So I started when I was 12. I played for about a little more, I think 2 years or so. And I stopped for 3 years or 4 or so. And I came back, but very slowly. And I'll be honest, it's very up and down. It's been, sometimes I am playing every day, and sometimes I'll go weeks, unfortunately, without playing. It's very sad. So I've been playing in total from 26 years. But like I said, it's really kind of goes back and forth. You definitely can learn an instrument a lot better when you really commit to playing it every day for hours. But it's still,
Wow.
sitar is still I do love it, but it's a difficult instrument to play. Yeah.
Beautiful. Jeff.
Yes, I have a question from yesterday,
Yeah.
Alik, from the student Alik, who had the great question of, do any of the instruments you use hold a lot of spirituality or cultural relevance? And do you ever get backlash for using them the way you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So the sitar is in Indian classical music, all of the classical instruments certainly are considered almost like the instruments themselves are supposed to be treated like divinity. And so and like I mentioned too, I grew up singing in the Sikh Gurdwara or house of worship. And some of the pieces that I sing, I actually yesterday for Jeff Ray's class, I sang one piece that was a piece of scripture that I took, and I wrote the melody and I set that, and I created electronic production. And I play in all kinds of venues. I'll play it in like kind of more DIY spaces and warehouses. I've played in clubs and I've played in concert halls. So yes, I have definitely had backlash to doing what I do and bringing this kind of bringing the sitar and vocals, and specifically when I use hymns with electronic production. So not everybody's going to be into that, but I'm more interested in kind of cultural growth and bringing all the elements of my identity together.
Man, that's really deep, because actually what I was imagining is two conflicts. You may have the conflict of maybe the sick people hearing your music out of maybe the spiritual context, if you will, in a popular space like a warehouse or a bar or something, and them feeling like this is not a sacred work when you're doing it in a performance space. Then you have Westerners, or those who do not believe in Eastern religions or Eastern philosophy, that may feel like, oh, this is witchcraft, or this music is from the devil, or there's something wrong. And so both types of people are in the same space having some like dissonance about the music. And it's really just sound. It's really just music. It's really just an artistic expression. It's really just creativity. But yeah, we have all these political and social and religious constructs in the mind, in our subconscious mind, in the world around us, that sometimes keep us from just being able to listen, right? And to just separate our beliefs or our background with, I can just observe this as art making and not ascribe it to any kind of dogma or theology or belief system. Can I do that? And that is a struggle. That is a very profound situation. How do you manage that as the artist? You may know and realize that people are having this dissonance, but you, in your internal strength, do it anyway. What gives you the strength to do it anyway, despite all of that dissonance that may happen in a room?
Sure. I'll be honest, it's not easy. I think when you're putting out your work, first and foremost, just taking your work from your studio and your head and your space to the public sphere is a really difficult transition for anyone who's ever done that, right? Maybe at some point there was a turn where you were creating something and then you presented it, right? So that's always difficult. I do think initially, the fact that I had received some positive affirmation and any sort of validation helps, just literally, just to talk about like self-esteem and all that, if I had immediately experienced a ton of pushback, I probably would not be with you right now, So right. Also really important just to get that affirmation. But then at a certain point, once, I've been doing this for a long time and have performed for a lot of people. I've performed all over the world. And once you do it enough, you realize that, your music doesn't, or your work doesn't have to be for everyone. And that's okay, and that's not, I don't make my work so because it's for everyone. I make my work first and foremost for me. And I make my work for people who want to engage with it, right? And who want to kind of take a chance and be moved by it. So yeah, and as long as I can share that, then that's, what else do I need?
Yes, beautifully said. Lots more questions. Let's see. Maria, how did you overcome the fear to perform when you first started?
Sure. I remember my very first tour performing solo. I closed my eyes the entire time when I was singing, or I guess not when I was playing sitar. When I was singing, my eyes were always closed. And it wasn't until the last day of that tour, it was maybe like a 8 shows, something like that in 10 or 12 days. And I remember the last show, I opened my eyes while I was singing. And I think, I guess I should say also, growing up, I did perform as a kid, so that helped. But it's just, if you really want to do it, you can push yourself and do it. But it is hard. It's, nothing in life is hard. It's not easy. It takes work. It takes, again, like I said, having your own personal positive affirmation and then affirmation from other people. But it's a challenge and it's a risk, but it's rewarding.
It is a risk and it is rewarding. Jeffrey, do you want to say anything? I'm just going through, we have a beautiful long list here.
I don't want to say anything. There was another question yesterday we talked about is, and I think I asked this question, what are some other artists that are out there doing something similar? It feels like you're almost one of the only ones out in this new terrain, this new experimental terrain, but are there any others? And if you could, I'll write them in the chat, or maybe you can. So
sure. So the people I thought of yesterday are Bishi, Eishi, and I can even see, and Gudia, who is here. Gudia, who's a video artist, media artist, and also musician. And then Queen Norgasm, who is based in LA. Oh, whoops, wrong spelling. Norgasm. Those were the three that came to mind. I know there are more. And Arushi Jain put out an amazing album this year, featuring vocals and modular synthesizers, and her work is just, she's kind of blowing up right now. So definitely check out her work. She's a friend of mine, and I'm so excited that her music is kind of getting out there. Yeah, I think those are the few I'm thinking of right now.
If I could ask this one question that's also from a student, sort of, what's in your future? What's going on? What's with your?
Sure. So I'm trying to wrap up. I'm trying to wrap up my next album right now, and then hopefully it would come out sometime in the spring, in 2022. That's what we're sort of trying to figure out the timeline, but I need to finish the work. So yeah, until you finish it. I have been playing a few shows this fall, but kind of trying to lay low. But I'm honestly, this is something I talked about a little bit yesterday. I'm at a little bit of a crossing, kind of a point where, the pandemic canceled a lot of my performances, and a lot of my practice was about live performance. And it has made me sort of pivot and really try to reconsider what I love about this and what I want to do. And something I've come back to recently is collaboration. What I did today was all solo, and I've been primarily a solo artist, but I have had collaborations here and there, and I've been reflecting on those collaborations. And so that, and to clarify too, that's collaboration with other musicians, but also with other disciplines. I once did a work with a puppetry group and played music and was in the puppetry group, which was so cool. And we went on a big tour. I've also worked with dancers and done like multi-channel video work. And I'm thinking about that kind of sort of multidisciplinary productions, site-specific work. So hopefully, I don't think anything will happen very soon, but that's sort of what I'm thinking for the next year to 5 years. We'll see. Yeah, along with other little collaborations that I continue to have going. There's a cellist I play regularly with. We have one album out, and we're called Raw Silk. I'll type that in the chat. We're starting to play again, and hopefully we'll finish up our next album again too. So there's that. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Beautiful. And that was actually one of our last questions, was, are you available for collabs? So one of our students is eager to collaborate with you. So how can we stay in touch with you? Can you leave your
Sure. So
handles? And
pretty much at Ami Dang on Instagram, on Twitter. Those are probably the best way. And then I probably have not updated my website recently, but we checked out. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Ami. I don't want to take much more of your time. Thank you all students for these beautiful questions. We missed a few of them, but please hold on to them for notes, and we can talk in our next class. Thank you all. Thank you, viewers from the public. Thank you all so much for joining us today at Resounding Visions. Jeffrey, any final words?
Ami, it was wonderful. You did such a wonderful job. And I just, now I'm gonna have to get one of your albums on vinyl and spend a lot of money or something, but I just
Yes.
wonderful, wonderful. And stay in touch, stay in touch. And I want,
Yeah,
we all,
likewise.
we all want to see you when you come back west, you know, San Diego, or I'm in LA area. So we want to see you. So
Yeah, I will at some point. I
Yeah.
don't have any plans this year, but hopefully in the spring or summer.
Yeah. someday in the future. All right. Stay in touch and
Great.
thank you so much.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
guys so much. Felicia, it was great to meet you, and Jeff too.
You too. Thank you, Ami.
Thank
Take
you.
care, everyone. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Great questions. Great questions. I'm gonna head on out and